when I was 6. When I was 6, we went on a cruise. We went to Fiji, Vanuatu, pretty much any island nation that had an illegitimate government, right? It was kind of like a who's coup tour of the South Pacific. In the 80s, when you went on a cruise, what you did was you threw streamers into the water because pollution hadn't been invented yet. I thought it was cool. And as everyone was throwing streamers, I was at the back of the boat, because on the back of the boat, on the water was a slick, and in the slick was a rainbow. And I was captivated. I was like, oh. And Mum came over and she said, hey, check out the streamers. And I said, no, the streamers, look at these. Look at the rainbow. It's awesome. I said, what is that? She said, oh, that's petrol. I said, petrol is awesome. That was a bad mistake, wasn't it? I mean, you don't say that to your kids, but I'm the eldest kid. I'm her first crack at bearing a child, you know what I mean? I'm her first go at. Your first kid's kind of like your first car. You write that one off, you promise to treat the next one's a lot better, don't you? So she didn't know what to say, and that day, I fell in love with petrol. You know why? Because petrol, when you're 6, it smells better than girls, doesn't it? You know. So I was, so when I was 6, hey, settle down. If you're 6 and fingering people, that you're ahead of your time. Only do it if your Uncle Simon says so. So, yeah, lowest common denominator, you've got to give it to them. They're from Newcastle. So I fell in love with petrol, right? And that, from then and there, I was the designated petrol person in our house. That's what I did. I was in charge of petrol. I would put petrol in everything in our house that took petrol, right? So the car, petrol, me, right? The mower, petrol, me, right? The whippersnapper, petrol, me, right? The dog, petrol, me. Sometimes it had a hole, I had petrol, right? So the only problem is there's only so many things that you can do with petrol until what you need, if you want to do more things with petrol, you need to get a friend called Pete, right? Pete's a bit of a cockhead because he's got no concept of the future. Most people have a friend like Pete, right? No concept of the future, no idea about consequences. He pierced his own nipple, thought it was cool, showed us, oh, that's infected. Fairly sure 15-year-old boys shouldn't lactate pus. But he called me up and said, hey, you know what I found? I found on this thing called the internet. I said, wow, what's the internet? He goes, it's something I downloaded to my computer, right? And I found this thing on it called napalm. We can make napalm. I was like, what? We can make it? Right? Now, we didn't want to make napalm. We just wanted to make something. Because you know, when you're a kid, you're filled with knowledge that you can't use. Knowledge that has no practical application. And it's very frustrating because you've got no outlet for it. You know, when you're at school and you're learning calculus, and you're like, when the fuck am I going to learn calculus? When am I going to use calculus? And your teacher's there going, oh, you're going to use calculus. You know when I've used calculus? In this show, on stage, telling people I've never used calculus. That's the only time I've ever used it. Your teachers will tell you, oh, you use calculus to catch. No, you don't. You use hand-eye coordination to catch. If you had to do quadratic equations every time a ball came in your head, you'd have more black eyes than teeth, right? And we could be using that time at school teaching people things more practical than calculus. And if you're not sure what those things are, have a think when you open the paper tomorrow morning and read about a footballer who's 20 years old, who's gone out tonight, got drunk and sexually assaulted 4 girls. Then the next day the club will come out and go, oh, don't be too hard on him. He's only 20, he doesn't know anything. He fucking knows calculus! Less with parabolas, more with the don't rape women. So, you take nothing else away from the show, that. And faggotron. So we got this recipe for napalm. We just wanted to make something, right? If we would have found a Woman's Weekly cake book, we might have made a sponge cake in the shape of a steam train. But as it happens, we found this napalm recipe. And I said, come over to my house. We'll make napalm at my house, right? My mum is going to be away for 30 minutes. Surely that's long enough to make napalm. So we went down the driveway, through the garage, into a place called Under the House. Now, Under the House is what happens when an accountant designs a house. And there's a bit left over for, like, taxation purposes. And we went in there, a concrete floor, good for mischief, right? And making napalm, definitely mischief. So we got in there, and you only need 3 things to make napalm, right? You need styrofoam, got it, petrol, good, and you need a blatant disregard for your own personal safety, right? So we assembled all the ingredients, Pete was good for that, fucking no concept of the future, right? So we got everything, we shut the door to Under the House, we turned the light on and said, let's make some napalm. So we got to make it in something. So we've got a bucket, a plastic one, because you know plastic is well known for its ability to hold up under extreme heat. So we filled it halfway with petrol because we thought we got to leave some room for the napalm. Now, what you do to make napalm is get styrofoam and you just dissolve it in petrol. The petrol just eats it. Nom, 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 nom. It's like the Cookie Monster of the petrochemical world. Nom, 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 nom. You can literally get a large stick of styrofoam and a bucket of petrol and literally just do this. You have to make that noise, right? It doesn't do that all the time. And it makes a big pink jelly. That's napalm, right? If you've ever seen the movie The Blob, it looks like The Blob. If you've never seen The Blob, just picture a blob, right? So we had a massive 8-litre blob of napalm, and we were very excited. We was high-fiving and everything, and we were like, yes, we've made napalm. What the fuck are we going to do with it? We had no idea. What do you do with napalm? I mean, it's not like we were fighting the Viet Cong or anything, you know. We had nothing to do. We were like, oh, well, Mum's going to be home in 20 minutes. I'm fairly sure she's not going to be happy with a liquid-based flame fuel under the house. Is she? Should we just tip it out, or should we take it down to the shopping centre and just leave it there? We're arguing about what to do with the napalm, and the light to the under the house blinked out. Like it's blue. And we're plunged into darkness, and as we're kind of jostling around, I kick the bucket, and don't knock it over, but knock it enough to go, ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh, the napalm, I've got to be careful. So I was like, hey, Pete, you just stay really still. I'm going to go over here to my dad's toolbox and get a torch. And as I'm rummaging over here for a torch, Pete, no concept of the future, just goes, don't worry, got this covered, pulls out a Zippo, fing! Yeah. Now, Pete and I had a history of bad ideas, right? Quite clear, we're making napalm in an enclosed environment, but quite clearly those bad ideas were just getting worse. Like, that was the bad news. I mean, the good news is if you plotted the severity of our bad ideas on a graph over time, they would have made a very pleasing exponential curve. But, that's about the best out of the situation, right? So quite quickly, the question of light became a moot point as brah! Column of fire just spewed out of the bucket, and we both went, whoa. Now, in a dangerous situation, if you have at least 3 people, at least one person's flight instincts will kick in, and they will just fuck off. Now, Pete and I, we were both rooted to the ground with fear. The plastic bucket, however, fucked off out of there in a melting fury, coward that it was, which left the napalm to just go, brrrr. And it's on fire and kind of semi-liquid. It's kind of viscous, kind of like honey and jelly mixed together, right? So it's just spreading out, setting fire to everything it touches. Like if under the house was Europe, these were the flaming Nazis, and they were taking over everything they could touch, just like Paintland, rah, occupied, Slovakia, rah, annexed, everything on fire. Now we're freaking out because there's a lake of expanding fire under the house.